You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thursty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast, and today we're doing something that kind of maybe like a quarterly thing. Yeah. We don't know, but it's just a show check-in. Shows have started. They've kicked back up. I have 4 shows in the month of February. I am leaving tomorrow for a 4-hour drive for another one, local. And throughout the year, I think I have about 22 shows scheduled altogether, not counting my 1 day a month local show. So we just want to talk about how things have changed. We obviously have a different Magic now. We have a different organized play support. We have a different economy than we did. So just looking at all that now, how have things changed with the world and the state it's in? So with that, let's take it away.
And also to note, we've also kind of switched roles. You're now attending more shows from the vendor side, and I'm attending them as an attendee now. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. Now we have 4 shows to discuss, and we'll kind of go down the same list of questions for all of them.
Yeah.
The first one on the list is Atlanta.
Yep.
So what type of show is Atlanta?
So Atlanta's always a really strange show. One thing that was great, it was the first big show of the year. That's obviously huge. It doesn't matter where it is. It's going to be good. Mm-hmm. But Atlanta tends to be a decent money city, so you can do pretty well with sales. Buys are typically very, very good, and it's like the thing that I noticed, and this was a general collectible show. It was a collecticon, so there wasn't any organized play going on, but there was a lot of business to business. And what I mean is, like, specifically, and this is something that I don't think has been really prevalent since pre-COVID. Correct me if I'm wrong if you've seen it at all, but it's literally there were about 4 or 5 vendors I dealt with that flew over from Europe or from Britain specifically, because the pound exchange rate is so favorable. Okay. It is better for them to pay to fly over and buy cards here and fly them back. And because of that, because the thing that's kind of always been a little separated is East Coast events, you get Europe. Yes. West Coast events, you get Southeast Asia and the Philippines, all that. And this being an East Coast show, we expected a little bit of Europe to be there. But there were probably, I dealt with about 3 or 4 personally. There were 10 to 15 that came by the booth that were literally just picking up like Neo type stuff. So that was actually pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time that I can remember since before COVID, someone said, well, the exchange rate is so favorable, I can't not do it.
I think that's what happened with SCG-Con Atlanta as well. It wasn't, and EW in November were just a ton of European vendors flooding into the East Coast of the United States because exchange rates were favorable, or they knew they had the opportunity to go to a bunch of shows or stores in a row that were worthwhile to work with. And so we have seen that kind of pick up a little bit. Insofar as vendor-to-vendor stuff goes, I haven't seen a whole lot of that taking place because everybody's kind of traveling and representing stores less and LGS, so that kind of B2B operation no longer really exists. People might be moving sealed product behind the scenes, but that's always how it happened. Just basically wash trading sealed for sealed, or credit with your store, and then I'll pick up what I want. So it is kind of what it is. Insofar as a collecticon goes, though, do you know if the attendance for Atlanta was the same as most other places? Do you have a round figure for a number of attendees?
They said it was about 15 to 20,000, which is about typical for a collecticon. The nice thing is they have day passes, they have weekend passes, they have everything. Mm-hmm. They also tend to pick cities which are within 5 to 6 hours of multiple major metropolitan areas. So, Atlanta has a ton in Florida, a ton in North Carolina, the rest of Georgia. There's a decent amount there. When you're in New Jersey, which is where one of the future ones is, you have a ton of metropolitan hours with,
So going north from there, you have New York City and Boston. A lot of people don't recognize that, and there's a fair chunk of Maine as well. and then you extend downwards to DC to Baltimore, et cetera, and
the
then
DMV area. You've got that. It's huge.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think they do a really good job of with their shows.
Yeah.
Is picking cities that they don't guarantee attendance, but they tend to have much better attendance.
Yeah, and by choosing those specific metros too, they don't often overlap with one another. You might get a little bit of overlap on the fringes, but yeah, you're not seeing a lot. So somebody in like NOLA might have to choose whether or not they want to go to Atlanta or a show in Texas, but they have that opportunity to go to both if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know, you mentioned this was a good show to sell, better for buys. When you were looking to schedule this show, when you were first solicited for it, did you know that Atlanta was going to be a buy city versus a sell city?
Yeah. I mean, it's, after you've been in it long enough, you just, you've done enough events in Atlanta, you've done enough events in Richmond, you've done enough events in Roanoke or Indy or whatever to kind of get an idea for what it's going to be like. The one thing that's, a little bit different now is things aren't as homogenized in terms of markets. Mm-hmm. There are some cities where Pokemon just doesn't do well. And then there's other cities where Pokemon is insane, just as an example. And that's the kind of thing that you had before where you could bring it all and it didn't matter. It would all sell. Yep. It's not necessarily the case anymore. It seems to be maybe not regional, but more market trend. So obviously right now Pokemon's really popular because it's up everywhere. Magic is starting to become more popular. And this is the first event in a while where I actually had people like, hey, do you know where there's a lot of Magic cards coming up? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I haven't had that since I was at a Grand Prix when those existed. So
yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's pretty interesting. I would expect if you're going to go to Atlanta as well, you would know what audience you were going to serve, and I would expect it to be primarily sports, and then after that, a little bit of TCG, because Atlanta's got everything.
Yeah, they have every major
football,
sports.
Baseball,
yep.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of that there. And I think that's the nice thing for those markets is that you do have overlap with TCG now because of Pokemon.
Yeah. So the inventory that you guys had, did you slant it towards a specific market, or did you try and keep it kind of flat across all verticals?
So we had some like high-end Magic, FBB duels, like Beta Wheels, stuff like that. We had some high-end Yu-Gi-Oh! But for the most part, we wanted to focus on Pokemon because the East Coast is rabid for that shit right now. And we brought mostly WotC era because the thought was, hey, everyone's going to have your modern alt arts, your illustrators, all that kind of stuff. Let's try to bring this out more for collectors, and try to have that, as we do the circuit, we're trying to establish that as kind of our brand. When you want old school, you come here. Yeah. We've got it in good shape, whatever. So that's what we went for, and it ended up that it turns out that Europe is also very hungry for that stuff.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have thought exactly that. Atlanta is a city with money. Atlanta is a city that is like aging, and so you can kind of serve into that nostalgia bit with the Magic cards that you mentioned, the high-end stuff, as well as Pokemon. I didn't expect it to be kind of a doorbuster, so to speak, but also you have to know who you're competing against in that area. Yep. I don't know if Super Games still holds the largest F&Ms in the world, but they used to, right? So if you wanted to try and compete with standard or modern era anything at that show, and somebody can just go down the street to Super Games to get it, like you're just you're going to get lost. So you slanted your inventory more towards collectors, like you already mentioned. So did you have anything slabbed for Pokemon? Stuff?
Yeah, there was a decent amount of WotC era stuff, and also some really unique pieces. One was the e-reader demonstrator demo card. When the e-reader came out, they had people go to stores and demo it.
Yes.
They punched a hole in the middle of the card so it could hang on a lanyard. It is the only card you can get with a hole punched in the middle that can get at least an 8.
That's actually kind of fun. We've been talking about the e-reader like as a nostalgia piece at dinner after legacy events, and like how goofy that thing was and how nobody knew what the hell to do with it, how it generally didn't work, and like it was just this weird thing, and like I don't even know what the hardware costs for that thing.
I have no idea. I don't know what it was at retail when it released, but yeah.
Okay, so booth sizing.
Yes.
Now, you were a store there. You weren't there to be a presenter a la like Crunchyroll or Panini.
Yeah, no.
So what were you offered for space, and what did you end up taking for space?
So basically, the way it worked was after how well Collecticons went last year, they solicited some people and said, hey, if you want to do them all again, you're in. Just let us know. Or if you want to do a bunch, let us know. And once we confirmed, they said, okay, here's the full floor. How many tables do you want? What do you want? Because the nice thing they do is when you get tables for Collecticon, you purchase them directly from the like loadout of the room on a map. So you know I'm picking a half island here. I'm picking an island here. I'm picking a corner here. And you know that's what you're getting because you immediately pay for it. Now, most of their shows, they'll put up signups like a month out or something. But being able to secure them for the whole year, obviously we want to do that and make sure we have a good spot. So, yeah, we had a half island for this one.
Okay.
There's a couple that we are getting islands for. And it's Kansas City, Chicago, and Chicago, I think.
Okay. Now, with the half island or the island, I guess it doesn't really matter. Did you guys have a back table for that so you could process or sort what have you?
Yes.
Was that part of the planogram that they gave you when you were looking to choose your booths? Because when we do anime conventions, that is always the hang-up. We get there, we set up the booth, and we're like, all right, we need X number more tables. Somebody find the union reps.
Yeah. So we did not have a backing table unless we brought it, which we did.
Yep.
Because they are very much, you will get the tables you order, and that is it. Sorry.
Yeah.
You deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's it's drivable for some of us, so just pack a table and you're good to go.
Yeah, or you could hit Walmart and get a folding table.
Yeah, one of the foldables. Yeah,
that's what we did in DC. We did that because there was a Walmart in the parking lot.
Yes, there is.
So you had a half island. How long the event was it Friday to Sunday?
So it was Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
And the haul hours were, so you have to be there between 7 and 8 a.m. You have to be done with setup before 9 because that's VIP arrival. And 10 is doors open.
Okay.
They don't really police.
Yeah, all that sounds gross when you can't set up Friday. But that was a leading question. How many employees did you have at the booth for a 2-day event like that?
3, and we could set up Friday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, 3 people we found is usually pretty good because we're going to have some lulls. Especially the nice thing is that, haul hours, it's closed at like 6 every night.
Yep.
It keeps Anime Con hours or Gen Con hours where, hey man, it's 10 to 6 and you get to get the fuck out and do what you want. So we're all able to easily cover when we're pretty busy, take bathroom breaks, whatever, if we need to, and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
So that's what we roll with usually.
How long was the booth? Like 2 tables of 16 feet kind of thing?
Yeah. 2 in front, and then your end caps are behind those.
Okay.
So you've got 16 wide table to table, and I believe it's 11 long.
Yep.
At that point, yeah.
Yeah. So that in my experience, 3 people was like optimal if you're not going to be sorting, etc. You don't need a dedicated person in the back.
Exactly.
It gets a little crowded if 4 people are standing there, but you can, if you feel like you need it, or you're there to serve like the primary audience because all the panels are going to be for this specific thing, and you've got it's a one piece, all the panels are one piece related, so you're going to bring all your one piece crap, so you're going to be flooded.
That's the people that are going to be here, exactly.
Yeah, then the 4th person makes sense. All right. So inventory wise, was the inventory you brought to Atlanta dedicated show stock from the website, stock from the store, or a mix of all of that?
So it was a mix mostly of store and show.
Okay.
Show stock, we started building up more because we're like, hey, we can do this. And the thing that we'll always do is what's the stale stuff that's kind of been chilling in the store that's like, slabs or sealed or whatever, that may only be 10 to 15 items that we're like, hey, look, we just want to turn this into something, so let's take it.
Yep.
To try to out it at the show because our people in store clearly don't care. It's been
exactly.
There. So it's usually a mix of those.
Okay. And some of the important things there is, I guess a follow-up question. When you are buying at the show, is there anything that somebody says, okay, we need this to fill a hole in the website, so we're going to buy it and list it immediately, or just list when we get back? What?
It's list when we get back, and there's usually a like, hey, here's our request list from the inner circle homies at the shop, or this is something we've been selling out of constantly. We need to get it. I mean, there's legitimately been times I remember TCG low on Verdance at one point was 16, and we were paying 17 because we were selling them in store all day for 19.
Yep.
So like, yeah, obviously the margin's not big, whatever, but
it doesn't
keeps
matter.
people coming in at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
When you
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say when you're a vendor or an LGS with a website, there are things that going into shows that you cannot afford to leave as zeros on the website. You know you have to fill it, so you do take slimmer margins on them to keep people buying from your website.
Especially like attach rate's huge. So if you know that it might only be a $2 card, but its attach rate is like 100%, and there's usually $10 extra on there.
Yep.
Man, shit, I'll pay $3 for it if I have to.
Yeah. So for those that don't know the terminology, attach rate is kind of like the impulse buy section at a grocery store or
the Aldi shame aisle.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I'm here at the store with my kids. They were good, so they can get a candy off the shelf as we're standing in line. Like that's the kind of thing that attachment rate. The also buys. Sometimes they're called strands on websites. When you see people who bought this also bought these. That's the attachment rate you're looking for. So yes, that's another reason why you can't afford to leave certain things as zeros on the website, because they'll attach in a very positive fashion.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question: did you bring any sealed for anything, and if you did, how much?
1 box of Gym Leaders sealed.
Okay, and that was the 4th or 5th WotC set?
Yeah.
Or was that Gym Heroes? Okay.
Or Gym Heroes, whichever WotC one was. One's not WotC, one is. But yeah, it was a sealed box of that, and it was a case of, well, we've had it in our store. Let's bring it and see what we can do.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Some events are sealed events, some aren't. Some are close enough to a pre-release, like the week prior, where sometimes it's you can like foot the bill unsealed because people want to play their own event, whatever. It kind of some of it's bullshit, but it is what it is. Like Hero Click sealed, you can bring the entire brick or bust it or whatever. Yeah. Did it actually move?
Yes, and one of the best coin flips ever. Double or nothing.
Oh.
Lost.
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah, I heard some anecdotal stories about exactly that set last weekend, but in the first edition box, which is apparently extremely rare. Now,
I don't know if this is first ed. We had it for 7,500 or 8K, I think. So
I think that's just the normal number for that set because it was short printed. So looking back at Atlanta, was there a specific like attendee profile you saw that was there, or was it just kind of a mix, i.e., people looking for specific cards, a specific type of player?
So it was a decent mix. I think the most specialized people in terms of like how narrow what they were looking for was, I think you touched on it perfectly, is the sports team Atlanta has. There were a lot of people there in the jerseys. Mm-hmm. Well, I want, Bijan Robinson, or I want Young Hui Koo, stuff like that. But by and large, we kind of just wanted to sprinkle it as wide as possible. Mm-hmm. Collecticon is very much a wide event rather than tall.
Yep.
There's a couple of like, known collectors of cards that'll show up and like, oh, I collect Chansey, or I collect Snorlax, or
they're everywhere.
I collect Ty Cobb, but yeah, they're everywhere. They're going to show up at events. You can't really control it. It may happen. But as far as attendees, it was, a broad spectrum. I think the thing that you could say we most catered to was the like 20 to 40 demographic. Male, female, didn't matter, whatever. Anyone in that demographic is slowly becoming bread and butter for these shows.
Okay.
And I will say, a lot of people did say they planned this trip. So to touch on what you said earlier, this was like a destination for them. They came to this event to spend money.
Yeah.
They had to spend money to get in, so they obviously are fine with spending money.
Yeah.
And that's something that, again, I haven't really heard in any event for a while. So the thought that these could be getting back to where we have these as destination, planned travel, special things for people, I think is huge, if that continues to bear out.
I agree. The last two questions we kind of answered up top. I didn't realize that most of these were collecticons when we were talking behind the scenes. So the second last question, why did you as a vendor decide to attend this show? It's a collecticon. They said if you want them, you got them, and you basically check the box, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And then the last question I have is a little more specific to each locale. So would you go back to Atlanta for a collecticon?
Yes, we're going back in September.
Okay. And the why for that is because it was just a worthwhile show. It was lucrative. The numbers were there to support going back.
The numbers were there outside of the vendor-to-vendor sales.
Yep.
Is, I think, the big thing. Because I think a lot of people see those vendor-to-vendor numbers and, like, work them into their show. I was like, no, that's not show numbers. That does not count. That wasn't something that happened to just walk up to your booth. You arranged that deal ahead of time. You had it set up. Like, that kind of thing, I think people mistake a lot of times. But no, this was just a good show. Everyone wanted to be there.
Yeah.
Which... I mean, how many Grand Prix did each of us vend where by hour 8 of day 0, we were like, man, I'm ready to be home.
Let's leave. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. And then logistics question. So was this in the primary convention center in downtown Atlanta that's by the Mercedes-Benz like Superdome where the Falcons play and the State Farm Arena, like in that little pavilion?
I thought it was.
Okay.
It was not. It was at the new convention center that's right by Georgia Tech.
That's interesting. So you're closer to it was closer to downtown in that regard?
Yeah.
All right. Because where we were for this SCG Con and then the last Atlanta event I went to was a Grand Prix in God knows what year.
Oh, God.
It was the same place, basically right next to the Georgia State Aquarium and like a gigantic convention center that served everything. So I'm very curious. I like that it was on Georgia Tech because it kind of reminds people like, hey, sports happen.
Yep.
Right. All right, so the next one we have, this is a local event to you.
Yes. We can probably combine the next two because they're similar to each other.
Okay, so when you say local for this one, are you in St. Louis or are you in Springfield? Not Springfield.
St. Louis.
City. Yeah.
Yeah. So the local show in St. Louis, and there's a couple of them now, and this is something that I know from people who are elsewhere have also seen start to pop up, and that is that our local one-day shows are turning into general collectible shows.
Okay.
There's, the Machinist Hall is the big one in town. It's been going for 40 some odd years. Same guy's been running it. It's the local show. It's like 30% Pokemon now. And some of these people who are like set up, like they've been doing it for the whole 40 years and they're now carrying Pokemon. It's absolutely wild.
Okay.
And I don't know, if that's unique to the Midwest because that's where most of the other people I know that have had this happen or if it's happening other places. But it's been really interesting to see the industry kind of homogenize into like, we're just going to cater to everybody. Like, we'll welcome fans of anything. As long as you're a fan, you're welcome here. And
yeah.
I think that's cool.
Yeah, there are a couple locals to Jersey, I think, but I haven't been to any, and I'm just starting to see the solicitation for the only one I remember that happened last year. But it's the same generic solicitation. It's just a postcard size thing. It's yellow. Yep. It's got like Batman and a couple other superheroes on it, and so it's just this general con vibe. Like, it's not a dedicated superhero con. I don't think it's a dedicated comic con, but that was probably the only IPs they were easily able to acquire or license for something like that. So I'll be interested to know how long something like that's been running. I do know the further north you go in Jersey, the closer you are to the capital region of New York State. And in that area, they do a lot of retro cons, specifically around video games.
Yeah, it's huge up there.
Yeah, so I don't quite know what goes on down here in South, but I'll try and figure that one out.
Sure.
Now, you said the local to you in St. Louis, we can combine with is it a local in Springfield, Missouri?
Yeah, Springfield, Missouri. It's like a 4-hour drive. The big difference between the two is the local show is in a Machinist Hall, and the Springfield show is on the baseball field used by the Cardinals minor league team, which is fucking sick.
That's awesome until it rains, but
yeah. Okay, well, we'll see if we're outside this weekend. It's like 0 degrees.
That's fair. So they're both one-day locals?
This one's Springfield's actually a 2-day.
Okay.
It's a Saturday and a Sunday, and this is actually so there's two things that have kind of sprung up around our local shows. The Springfield one does a trade night. They'll do it in the clubhouse basically after the show. You go there, it's a trade night for anyone to show up, attendees, whatever. And at the local, there's actually a shop that has started doing Pokemon events after Machinist Hall is over that are like, Spike Win-a-Box type events.
Sure.
But they've actually had people start showing up.
Okay.
And that's been pretty cool to see.
All right. So I assume attendance for these has been growing kind of steadily.
It's pretty steady. The Machinist is kind of like, frankly, it's capped.
Oh, okay.
It's not like limited. There's not tickets or anything. It's just that the exposure from it is not growing. But you're not seeing the same customers show up every time, but it's the same number. So say if there's 2,000 people through the door, it's an 11,000 person pool it's cycling from.
Yep, yeah. So one person in, one person out, one person in, and it's a rotating door all day.
Yeah, exactly. Like, of those 11,000, only 2 show up. Well, they might not show up at the next one, but they will after that. That kind of deal.
Okay. So what about Springfield? Is there like a no cap for that, I assume? But do you happen to know
no cap for that? They had I think last time they said they had 3,000 or 4,000.
Okay.
Which is pretty good. They also, they do it up big. They've got food trucks. Like a brewery comes out and serves beer. Like, it's awesome.
All right.
If it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't do it because Springfield sucks. But show's sick.
That's fair. All right. So for these 2 shows, because they're local, do you know if they're more buy or sell when you're scheduling these?
So it depends. Our Pokemon crowd is very discerning and only wants it if it's a raw 10.
Okay.
So I know I'm not going to sell Pokemon, but I can usually do a pretty good job of buying for stuff to bring back to store.
Yep.
Now, as far as sports goes, it's always good for buying and selling. Just depends on what it is. The off season for baseball right now is great because outside of Ohtani, everything is much more affordable because nobody cares. Whereas right now basketball's up because it's basketball season.
Yeah.
So in that regard, there's always something where it's a good buy and a good sale time of year. But for TCGs, these are much better for buying than for selling. Unless you have slabs. If you have slabs, they'll buy them.
Okay. And so your audience, who you're selling to, so do you slant your inventory in regards to product catalog?
I'm generally yes. So one of the things I also do to just personally, I collect graded sets of older baseball and football. So as I upgrade those, I'll pull those out of the collection and put the lower grades up for sale. And those will just always be in the inventory, no matter what, until I sell them. Mm-hmm. But for the stuff I don't pull from that, I'm going to bring, your banger Pokemon slabs, weird one-offs, strange oddities, because I love that stuff and people look for that stuff with me, and sports.
Okay.
And we're baseball, so baseball.
All right, that's fair. Until they start making cards for whatever league the Battlehawks are in.
XFL. I already have the first box from last year.
All right.
It's great.
So for both of these cons, how big was your booth?
So the thing I love about sports cons is how affordable they are. 3 tables was like $300 for the 2-day, and $75 for the 1-day.
Okay. No, that's insane compared to the grands we're looking at for other stuff, right? Yeah.
You could get like a half island from Channel Fireball at the end for $17K.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Employees.
Yes. So this one, it's basically me and my partner that I set up with.
Okay.
We don't really bring any other employees. If they want to come, they're welcome to. But it's like, I'm not going to pay you to do it. Like, we don't need you here, but I'm happy to, you need a place to crash. We've got a hotel anyways.
Yeah.
You want to ride down? I have a seat in my car. That kind of thing. And when we do Dallas, one of my guys is down there coaching baseball now, so he'll come up and help.
Okay. Got it. So inventory, you brought dedicated show stock from the website, in-store?
Dedicated show stock. I prefer just having dedicated show stock, and that's it. Mm-hmm. If I had a choice, that's what it would be. And it would be filled with stuff that's not going to go down. It's just going to sit in a box and park until it sells. Similar to how some eBay sellers set up their eBay store as museums rather than out of a desire to sell anything. I just think having a dedicated show stock is easier to inventory, especially, I hate to say it, but the thing you have to worry about at these smaller shows is theft.
Yep.
Last weekend was a local. We had an Ohtani rookie number to 10 stolen. Cool. So at least if it's just show stock, I know what the inventory is. I know what I brought. I know what I sold, and I can keep track of it a lot easier. And I'm just more paranoid about that.
Nope, it makes sense. Shrink from show stock. You can generally kind of wash away the ROI on individual pieces. And also churning through stock to re-up is a lot easier because you don't have to worry about tuning buy lists, etc. You can just kind of let it ride. So same questions before for sealed. Did you bring any to these events?
So the big thing with these is a lot of our local stores will set up as individuals, or I set up as an individual. It's not my store. But so you get a lot of the current ETBs, the current sealed boxes, the current blasters, the current megas, and it's just they're charging more than anyone else, and I just don't want to engage with it. I'd rather sell that in store to my customer base.
Got it.
Because even though, like they're 40 minutes away, like I would much rather sell this box of, Evo to one of my locals who I know is going to bring those cards back and actually reinvest more money in the store. And people at smaller sports shows love the art of the deal, and I just don't care.
That's perfectly fine. That's one of the questions people always get asked when an event is local. Like, oh, you drove here? Do you have sealed? Do you have supplies?
Yes. And I bring supplies, and I will upcharge the fuck out of them.
So supplies for the locals, you're looking at, I assume, top loaders, penny sleeves, like screw downs or clamps?
Yeah, it's just penny loader or penny sleeves and top loaders, really.
Yep.
The different sizes are important for sports.
Got it.
And the other thing is oddly, some of the really cheap garbage, those sleeves you used to find in the $2 bins at your local store, those actually do well there. It's really weird. It's kids.
Yeah, they just need something. All right. Yeah. That makes sense. Just I wanted to cover it because you were driving, and that's, like I said, that is probably the most common question.
It is. And that's very much, I've even been the guy that's like, hey, are you taking bulk? Nope. They drove. Go to them. They drove. Right over there.
Yeah. So, these have been going on for years. You have an exact idea of what your attendee profile is going to be, right?
Yeah.
And you're not looking at players. You're looking at collectors of everything and anything.
Everything and anything, and it's, and I think this is true of the overall industry, it has recently tended to go younger. A lot of the customers that I deal with for my larger deals are like fucking high schoolers rocking around with rollies on their wrists. Mm-hmm. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's tended to grow younger. And I think the big part of that, and I know I've said it on the podcast before, and you've said it, is like, look, man, they don't care what the unemployment rate is. They don't give a shit. They're going to spend their money, and they're going to make their money regardless because they don't care.
Yeah.
Because they're kids.
Exactly. Like they don't have to worry about 30 years from now. Like, am I investing properly in my 401k, my Roth, et cetera? What does retirement look like? I don't know, but I sure got this card.
Yeah.
And then last two questions. You decided to go to the show because it was local. It's been running forever. These two, are you going to go back? Yes, because it's local and they've been running forever.
Yeah, and the other one, actually, this is only their second one, but the Springfield one, it's just fucking sick. Like, you're on a minor league baseball field. That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you go back? Yes. Why baseball field? Got it. Understood.
Yeah, it's sick.
All right.
Would you not go see a Field of Dreams game every year if you could?
I absolutely would. I've been to a handful of professional and lower league stadiums, and they're always fun to see.
Yeah.
Always interesting. Now, the last show on the list, that's coming up at the end of the month. This is Collecticon Los Angeles.
Yes.
Okay. So we already touched on what Collecticon is. Specifically for LA, though, do you expect it to be more generalized to whatever collectibles? Like, if you go look at the Collecticon website, it's just infinite logos for infinite things. Yeah. Or do you expect this to be more slanted towards card games and anime?
Card games and anime. I think there will be an amount of sports. The Burbank show is the largest sports show basically every year. I mean, the national, obviously, but Burbank happens every couple months. That's in California. It's basically, imagine Star City opened up their headquarters and had people set up inside their warehouse to sell cards.
Okay.
Also, you can buy cards from their fucking warehouse. But no, it's definitely anime and TCGs. You know, San Diego Comic-Con, all that stuff, anything anime, pop culture, Disney, obviously.
Yep.
So Lorcana is actually something we're planning on bringing, because even if there's not Lorcana players, it's LA. There's going to be people that like Disney. They're probably going to show up and be like, "Oh, there's a cool Disney card. Let me get that."
Anaheim, California is not that far away, so
yeah.
Makes sense. Do you know what the average attendance is for an LA Collecticon?
They did one. I think they've done one LA so far. And it got canceled last year because of wildfires. Okay. So I don't think we've had one.
Okay. The reason why I asked was because, one, I was pretty sure there had not been one in a while.
I don't think there has.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because they just haven't had one or because it was canceled or something.
And
but
two,
it's been a minute.
If they did have one, I expect the numbers on it to be banger, just like if they did one in New York City.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So going to LA, I assume you're going to be flying in.
Yes, okay. I will be flying in actually a couple days early to go visit my sister, but yes.
So is this going to be a buy show or a sell show? On which end do you want to bring the cards?
Sell. This is the first big, like, Southeast Asia friendly event of the year, and based on how the economy of our two regions are going, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of coin op going on.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yep. But
I expect it's going to be bring big money. We'll have our Beta Chansey that was from the Creatures Inc. like pre-con decks. We got one of those, and I'm sure we'll probably get a reasonable offer on it this weekend. I expect LA shows like this to be very, very sell-friendly. Because it's specifically not yet geared as a Comic-Con type event.
Okay.
I think once it goes if it goes into the more anime convention style, it will not be as good for sales, because then your attendee is going to be less of the, like, I'm a vendor from overseas and it's more favorable for me to come over here and get it. Like, that type of thing won't exist as much at a Comic-Con style event, because most of your customers are there for the con, not just to make money.
Got it. That makes sense. So, knowing this is going to be a sell event, are you going to be slanting your inventory towards that? And I don't mean in the sense that, like, the slabs are just going to cost more. Like, sorry, we're going to bring out the more costly slabs, but more like, yes, we're going to bring more slabs overall, kind of thing.
It's the more slabs overall.
Okay.
That's the market over there has gotten much more, especially like where sports cards are concerned. Raw cards aren't nearly as desirable. Slabs have started to overtake. That's just what it's seen more as an investment over there, and similar. There's a lot of younger people getting into it.
Okay. So insofar as the booth is concerned, what shape have you picked out?
Half island, same as the other. Debated island, but just the shipping and everything would have just been too much. So didn't want to do it without knowing for sure how good the event was.
Okay, and that makes sense. We talked about this early on in the podcast. Like, if you're going to be doing show after show after show, then pallet shipping your booth is one of the best things you can be doing. But you need to understand your margins, what your cost is going to be, et cetera. So that makes sense.
Well, and that's we would have been shipping from the first week of February to the fourth week. So at that point, we have to pay for it to stay somewhere.
Yes, warehouse it effectively.
And then it's, that adds exponentially to the cost. So, we can slam our inventory in like a checked bag and a carry-on, and we're good to go.
Yep, that makes sense. So are you still going to be bringing 3 employees, or are you going to have the 4th out there?
We're going to have 3. Okay. My sister is getting a badge to attend and potentially help us out. So maybe 4.
Okay. But that's fine. If it's going to be a sell show, it's one of those things where, again, you don't need somebody on the back table, because you expect to be taking cards from the cases and putting them in hands and not having to resort and put out. So that makes sense. And you're not going to be bringing any kind of sealed inventory with you, because fly show.
Fly show and TSA. Don't want to deal with that.
Because they will cut open a sealed box if they think there's something inside it that they need to investigate. Absolutely makes sense.
Will.
So the stock that you're going to be bringing, you're going to be taking your slabs from store to bring out, like you mentioned, the Chanseys, etc. Right?
This is also one where we'll pull some of the stale stuff from the website.
Oh, okay.
Just because, again, the market is so open here, and it's LA. There's a lot of money there, so you don't know if you're going to get people that plan this event out, or someone that's just can casually drop 10K on a card and not care.
Yep. Okay, and that makes sense to pull from any source you can for those large stale objects, like people who just aren't looking locally. Now, you've kind of already built the attendee profile in your mind for this event. It's basically just people who are coming out there to look to spend, mainly vendors, and that's going to be similar to like the Edison event that we were talking about earlier, right? You're going to expect, because Edison's not too far away from New York City, not too far away from the greater DC metro, that you will have vendors from Europe fly in, drive up.
Yep.
Right. So you'll kind of be looking at these two events similarly, where your attendee profile, the ones that you want to attract and want to deal with, are there to buy.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. And again, Collecticon, so the last two questions are basically answered. You checked the box and said, yes, we'll do them all.
Yeah.
And the assumption on going back to LA is going to be answered when you see what the numbers are.
Yeah.
Right.
The plan now is, yes, assuming the dollars make sense, because again, these kind of shows, when you're flying out multiple people, it's different if you're flying out one person and people drive. But when you have to fly everyone out, and you've got to fly your inventory out, and you've got to spend extra steps on cataloging that inventory so that you can know it doesn't get fucked up on the plane. Like, there's just a lot that adds to it. So yeah, if the dollars make sense, we'll absolutely do it.
Also, like you talk about flying people out, the cost on hotel is not hidden, but the cost on a rental car or whatever is. So that's something else, or transit to get around.
I just, on a whim, checked for an Uber from the airport to my sister's apartment, which is on Laguna Beach. From LAX to Laguna Beach, it was $175 for an Uber.
Yeah. So
when I was checking at like 9 in the fucking morning.
Jesus Christ. It's never not busy, man.
No.
That place is a 24/7 machine.
Yeah.
So there will be additional overheads with that. Price of gas to refill, etc. So yeah, there's going to be a lot to consider overall. When we were going out there, we were doing Anime Expo. It was such a good show that we couldn't not go to Anime Expo because the exposure to the sheer number of people. So I would expect it's going to be similar at the end of the day, but you really do want to know what those numbers are going to be like.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how Collecticons are they twice a month now? Is that what we looked at?
It's about twice a month. There's a couple months where there's 3, and then they basically don't have anything for like the last 2 months of the year.
Okay. So of these shows, is there one you're more excited to go to than another from a vendor perspective?
From a vendor perspective, I think the ones I am most excited for are Kansas City, not just because of proximity, but because like that is a spot in the Midwest that always has very, very good events. They just never get events.
Got it. Okay.
But when they do, they're really good. Like the Kansas City Grand Prix and like it was Modern Horizons 1 was released that weekend. That event was great. There were like 3,000 people for that. And so that one I'm really excited for. And frankly, I am always excited for Chicago because it's a Midwest city that has the perks of your East and West Coast cities.
Yep.
Where you can get intercontinental vendors coming in because Chicago is effectively an international city. They can do a ton of fucking business there.
Yep.
And you'll get a lot of the incidental, I just happened to walk in and drop 10K on a card. And since it's a Midwest city, the show's over by 2 on Sunday, which is always nice.
It's true, yeah. And the drive up is not bad. It's just a straight line.
Yeah. Yep.
So like exciting time for you because shows are starting to pick up. You'll be able to get out there, sally forth again, and peddle your wares. Yeah,
and I can honestly say now, looking ahead to the year, this is the first time I legitimately remember being genuinely excited for all of the shows without an element of, fuck, that's so much. And literally, outside of, wanting to be home with my wife, Atlanta, I never had the thought of, God, I don't want to be here. When I was in that hall, I was having a blast. And that's, for both of us, a rare thing to feel in that hall.
Yeah. No, and that's always good to see and good to hear, especially as the year drags on and you have more events to look forward to. We talked about the kind of like turn and burn lifestyle where your weekend is like Tuesday and Wednesday, and then you're on a plane again. Like how Alex did that for a year and a half with Shaman Fireball is still like
absurd. Yeah,
something to be believed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for the rest of the year, right now, you have all the Collecticons booked. You have
all of my locals booked, and I have both of the Dallases I am doing this year booked.
Okay. Is one of them the National, or are you not booked for the Nat?
I attend the National. I specifically do not ever want to vend the National. All of the problems we talk about with like working an old style Grand Prix booth magnified by 100x, because there's so much more theft, there's so much less security, you have so many less employees, and there is so much more money in that room.
Got it.
I'd rather just walk around and like, I get to be the guy that's like, hey man, you want anything? I'm gonna go grab lunch. I'll bring it back.
Yeah, and you get to take a look at all the Gonzo stuff in the room that people have brought in.
Yeah.
So, all right. I think that's going to be it for today, unless there's anything else you want to talk about. But there's going to be more opportunity to have these discussions throughout the year. Like you said, we're going to try and upcycle these. We got a couple holes in the schedule still to fill, and it'd be nice to kind of check in and see how things are going throughout the year and see if these kind of keep pace with expectations.
For sure.
So for at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, YouTube, and Blue Sky, I am at Halt, I am Reptar. You are
at Damon _Thurston.
We'll see you next week.